what I call the mix, which is a little bit of everything. And so I'm going to just start in a word of prayer just to get myself focused and commit this time in prayer, and pray that it's fruitful and helpful, and then I'll share with you what the challenge of that might be, and then we'll get stuck into it. Lord, we want to thank you so much for this opportunity to journey, to gather together, to grow and to learn. Lord, I love that concept in your word where iron sharpens iron, where we can be in community, but where we can really be sharpened and effective for your kingdom and for your cause. And so, Lord, as we use this opportunity to grow and to learn together, Lord, may this conversation bring glory and honor to you. I ask for wisdom and discernment. May you anoint my heart, my lips, my mind. And I also pray for each person here and their giftedness, their passion, which has led them to being here and being a part of today, about building your kingdom for your glory, particularly as we reach out to the children, not only in our own church, Lord, but into the broader community. So may this bring a smile to your face, is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so the only challenge, I just want to say this briefly up front, is that I'm going to leave some time at the end if you'd like to ask any questions on a particular area or thought. The only challenge with doing the mix is that we don't really have time to go deep in just one area. So it's a bit of a superficial, you know what I mean? So when you're doing the mix, you're talking about everything I normally talk about instead of deep diving into just one area. Okay. So, but I think hopefully something may bubble up that you go, that's interesting, that's helpful. The main reason that I do what I do is because children matter to Jesus. And if you stop to think about it, he went out of his way to do ministry in a very radical way. He not only made time for children and got very cranky where people disregarded them, but he was countercultural. He went out of his way to affirm and uplift women in ministry as well, which in that day and culture was not the way that life happened. But I love that Jesus intentionally leaves an example and very strong words about ministering to children, and that we should not lead them astray and take it very seriously, because he says if you don't, some very dire warnings are issued to us, like being cast into the depths of the sea with a millstone around your neck. Do the maths, that doesn't mean you're going to float. That means you're going to sink, and it's not going to be good. So he was very, very, very clear that ministry to children was important. And the reason I'm so passionate about it is I really, really become frustrated when churches start to use language like, kids will be disciples or important or a part of our church in the future. No, they are your church now. They are disciples now. You are growing them and modeling what faith and practice and belief looks like now. And we often take it too seriously too late. And I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that presents. So I think focused on children means we have lifelong disciples if we make that very important from the get-go. The second reason I'm very passionate about this is that I'm not just a pastor, I'm a father. So there's my lovely little family, my wife Gersie and my two girls. That photo is a couple of years old. My two girls have grown significantly. But I really love that photo. It was taken at Avondale when we were there for a grad 1 year. And I looked at them as we took that photo, and I realized that God has given all of us as parents, but also as significant leaders, not just only to our own children, but to the children that God's put in our care. And so that is a big responsibility. I don't just want to care for my own kids. I want to care for all kids as someone who invests in them for God's glory and his kingdom, so that they're there with us for eternity. And so that's another reason that motivates me. I'm going to talk about 7 key ideas or concepts. And I'm going to introduce them very quickly and then come back and break each of them down one at a time. So you'll see some repeats in a moment. The first thing I want to talk about is taking church concepts and simplifying them so that kids can buy in and relate to them. What do I mean by that? I'm going to use this as an example. Our church, my local church, Mile End Community Church, has a vision and mission statement. I don't know if your church does. By the way, if you do, can anyone share with me what that is? That's what most people do. They go to a bit of paper. Okay? Now, if adults do that, what chance do you think kids have of knowing what we're about and why it's important? I'll tell you what ours is, and I've memorized it. I didn't want to put it on the screen so you can see if you're going to do your homework, you'll realize that I'm right. My church's vision statement is a spirit-filled Christian community that supports people, builds relationships, and grows community. That's our vision statement. That's who we want to be, okay? I then thought, coming back as the pastor in this church only about 2 years ago, how do I engage the children in this? How do they relate to why we're here and why this is important? And in my journey and in my preparation to coming back as the local church pastor there, I came across this quote by Ellen G. White. And it says, Christ's method alone will bring the greatest success in reaching people. The Savior mingled with one, I'm going to read it this way because I'm struggling to read the back. The Savior mingled with men as one who desired their good. He showed their sympathy for them, ministered to their needs, won their confidence, and then he bade, follow me. So, I just wanted to highlight something. 3 things. First thing he did is he got to know people and connect with them. The second thing that he did is he showed that he cared about them and ministered to their needs. And then he said, follow me, and I would like to grow you in your faith and your service. And so what we ended up doing at Mile End Church is I boiled down everything that we did to 3 words. Know, show, grow. Because all 3 of those concepts are in our mission statement, if you stop to think about it. And it's also in this quote, which is one of my favorites. So we have those 3 words plastered all over our church in banners and flyers when you walk into the front of the church. 3 words. Know, show, grow. Do you think a young child can remember those 3 words? Do you think adults can remember those 3 words? Because most people will reach for a piece of paper and even forget what it's about. But those things need to be at the forefront of our mind, and if we don't get it, kids won't get it. And if they don't, they won't be a part of what we do and why we do it. And I keep saying to churches, engage your kids in this process. They want to feel like they belong, and they're a part of what happens in this church. And so I want churches to really include kids and focus even things like vision and mission statements in a way that kids can relate to. So here's the 6th thing. So that was one thing I wanted to talk about. And I want to challenge you as a church to think about how you make that relevant and applicable to your own children. Do they get why you're here and why you do what you do? And if they don't, and you don't, maybe that's a conversation starter. So here's the 6 things in the remaining time that we have. I want to talk about homegrown, which is something that we initiated a number of years ago. And I've been pushing that very strong, and we'll talk about what that looks like. Faith Shaper, which is a consultation amongst children's ministries across the entire Australian union. So all of the people that do my job across Australia, we all sat down and developed this together. The 5 simple strategies. I think that putting children's ministries at the heart of your outreach is probably the most effective way to do evangelism, in my opinion. And yes, I'm biased, but I'll tell you why I think that's the case. Whoops. GraceLink, which is Sabbath school, I often get a lot of questions about. Men's ministries or family ministries, because there's a really big challenge in our churches at the moment where there's not a lot of men engaged in children's ministries. And there's a real absence of dads that are taking a proactive role in spiritual things as well. And so we initiated the men's retreat down at Crosslands with men to try and resource and encourage them. And I just wanted to touch on that briefly as part of the mix. And then some creative ideas. So there's the 6. So let's get into fastening your seatbelts, because it's going to be fast, because we're going to go through a little bit of all of them, if that makes sense. So homegrown, what does that mean? When I say the words, what comes to mind? When something's homegrown, what does it imply? Where you live. Where you live? Perfect. What else? That it's healthy. It's different, yeah. It's different to just whatever, commercial. Yep.
It's not mass produced, yeah.
So secure, safe. Yep, I love that. All those reasons and more, we thought the message we need to drive home is that kids' primary place of spiritual development is home. Not church and not school. Okay? Am I taking churches and school off the hook? Absolutely not. We need to up the game. But the primary place of spiritual development is at home. Okay? And I want to share this idea with you. The book came out a while ago, many years ago now, in fact, called Think Orange. And it's this collaboration idea between home and church. We're both trying to grow our kids spiritually. Home's trying to do it. Church is trying to do it. When you bring the red from home, where the heart is, the yellow from Flame or Holy Spirit Church together, you get the yellow and the red gives orange. So this book came out called Think Orange, okay? I wanted to go one step further. And the reason I wanted to do that is I was challenged by some of these quotes from Ellen G. White. Listen to this. How sad it is that many parents have cast off their God-given responsibility to their children and are willing that strangers should bear it for them. They are willing that others should labor for their children and relieve them of all burden in the matter. Listen to this. Then she goes and she says, you expect great things from your church, you expect incredible things from your minister, and you expect marvelous things from your Sabbath school teacher. It's like parents want all these people to do their job and then my kids will be great. Again, I don't want to say that churches, ministers, and Sabbath school teachers don't need to up the ante and do the best that we possibly can. Absolutely. No one's off the hook. But I also want to help parents realize that we want to partner with them because kids spend most of their time at home. More than school, and even more than church. If we had to rank it, it would be home, school, church, in hours. Okay, and so I've pulled out a video clip because we didn't have time and we couldn't get audio that illustrated that point really, really well. She goes on and talks about the school, which we just talked about, and how that we want all the school to take responsibility for the spiritual development of our kids. With time, I won't read the entire quote, but she made some very strong statements about it. She then talks about this idea of linking up together. We're all trying to achieve the same thing. Church is trying to do it, home's trying to do it, and schools are trying to do it, okay? We have an Adventist school system, but we also have many kids in Sydney that don't go to an Adventist school. We also have many kids that go to other faith schools, but have the opportunity to explore their faith in a very open and transparent way, which is a great thing. But we're all trying to achieve the same thing. She then goes on to say this, and I agree with her wholeheartedly. It is in the home that the education of the child is to begin. Here is their first school. George Barna, a very well-known researcher, goes on to say, the home has the greatest impact on young lives, with few exceptions, and if we fail to impact the home, we will never make a lasting impact on children. So one of the questions I keep asking myself is, how can churches better resource and equip families that are wanting to grow their kids spiritually? That we're not always trying to do it for them, but equip parents to do it with their children and not feel like they just bring them here and someone else will do it and then that's the end of it. So that's why we initiated this homegrown idea. It's where the child is rooted and planted at home. That's the child. Church and school become the watering cans or fertilizer, if that makes sense. Okay? The child is not planted or rooted at school or church. They're at home. However challenging that circumstance or that situation might be. Okay? I use the word home because a home is made up in today's day and age of a range of different things. Okay? Single parents, mixed families, you name it, and the list goes on, all sorts of scenarios. But nonetheless, that's where the child is. So the soil, the plants, and the water. So I just want to challenge you, and I say this to churches all the time, in this idea of thinking homegrown, what's one little thing that you could start to do that would make a difference spiritually in your home? Now, if you're like me, at New Year's, you make a big list and you don't do any of them. What I want to challenge you with is what's one little thing that you could do and do it until it becomes a habit before you take on another one. Okay? And maybe start challenging or talking to other families in your church about what's the one thing that they want to do next. All right? So don't come up with a massive list. Pick one and then do that well and do it consistently. But take one step in that direction as a home and not asking for someone else to do it for you. And so that's one thing I want to challenge churches and groups about, is that parents need to step up. Not saying that churches and schools don't need to really come to the party on this. Absolutely we do. But it is a partnership, okay? So that's the idea of homegrown. I came up with this a little while ago, and it's this idea of, we don't often have meals at the table together anymore. So here's a placemat that you can sort of print and put on the table. It's got all sorts of different ideas and games. That's the back. You can even keep track of how many times you have dinner together as a family. You might be shocked and horrified when you realize that it's not as many as you probably thought. But so many different things happen at the dinner table or around a table when often, parents model this very poorly. We come with all of our devices and work and everything, or we run off to do something. That is the time for us, and I don't have time to, as I said, to deep dive into this because I have a range of ideas or resources where I could show you how that could potentially look and be. Yes? Yeah, sure, I can give you access to that. All right, so that's just one idea. This idea of collaboration is, homegrown, is between homeschool and church. So taking the Think Orange concept, I said we have homes, we have churches, but we also have a school system. Let's just use the Adventist school system because, that's one that aligns with our values, our beliefs. And I said, imagine what it would look like if our homes and our schools collaborated, if our homes and our churches, like Think Orange, collaborated, but what would happen if our schools and our churches collaborated a little bit more together as well, using the same concept? And I came up with just a few ideas there, and you can probably come up with even more yourself. But I think we need to realize that we're all trying to do the same thing, and sometimes we need to think smarter, not harder, okay? What are ways that we can find synergy and collaboration in trying to do things together? And so that's just a bit of a conversation starter there between that concept. This is another idea for homegrown. I came up, by the way, if you want to buy one of these little boxes, they're from Kmart. They cost you about $6. And it's how you can teach your kids around the issue of stewardship or money. So there's all these little compartments, and you can help them figuring out how much they want to spend, save, share, with projects like ADRA, or sponsor a child, or support the church through tithe, if they're earning their own little pocket money or whatever, and also how they would like to serve with offerings, because there's difference between tithes and offerings, obviously. And helping kids understand that from little is really key, because often we leave those conversations and education for way too late, in my opinion. So I just wanted to share that with you as well, and that starts at home. We can model that at home together as a family. Something we've done with my girls, and I've done as a chaplain, and I do with my church regularly, is find ways for kids to serve as a home. I want to tell you this story, and it hit me hard a little while back. One of the guys from another church, another denomination, and I were talking, and he said he found out that his neighbor 3 doors down, his wife had passed away. So guess what they wanted to do? His wife and he sat down at the dinner table, and she's like, I could make some meals. And he goes, I could go and mow the lawn. He goes, and they sprung into action, and they got going. And he goes, great, right? And I said, yeah, it sounds awesome. Well, that's awesome. He goes, no. He goes, you know what we realized? He goes, we were a week into serving and helping this old neighbor down the road, and never once did we stop to think, how do we involve our 3 children in this? We never stopped to say to them, what do you think we could do to help our mate down the road? Oftentimes, service isn't something we necessarily involve or invite kids into. And they're so good at it, and they have such a generous heart. But we often don't collaborate with them or involve them in the decision-making. We just tell them, this is what we want you to do. But imagine if we sat down as a family and said, what do you reckon we could do to help this person out? He said, my daughter blew me away. He goes, she came up with little flower, like bouquets and stuff that she left with a card. She goes, that was her thing. He goes, it's not what I would do, it's not what my wife would do, but she felt like she was doing something. And she goes, and she could tell that this little old man absolutely loved the attention and the affection of this young lady. So I'm wanting to model that sometimes we need to think about how we involve and give children a voice in that process. Moving on to Faith Shaper. I'm going to be really honest with you. This rattled us as a church. We looked at the data of how many young people we lose as a denomination. And I'm going to tell you this, we're doing way better than most churches, which is the good news. But it's horrible. So you must know how bad it is when we're losing about 50% of our young people, and other churches are losing that way, way, way above. Okay? So here's some stuff that really hit us hard. This idea of this book, Goodbye Generation. Despite all of our incredible children's, youth, and adults programs, we have not been able to stop the mass exodus from our churches. We have not just lost one generation, we are losing several. Here's another one. You lost me. And this is, again, I'm not going to read all of it, but there are so many books that are covering this topic. Ken Ham, who's an Australian living in America, students didn't begin doubting in college, they simply departed by college. This all started a long, long time ago, where no one was taking those conversations and issues seriously. And then Mend the Gap from an English author, if the church is hemorrhaging young people, we have to ask ourselves, is it because we address the issues of discipleship too late? Could not have said that any better myself. Kids don't become disciples when they're older. They are disciples of Jesus the moment that they're born. We're modeling to them how to do life and faith from the get-go. And when we start to take them too seriously, they've already made up their mind that this isn't the place for me. Because no one else has bothered for my opinion or my input to this point anyway. This is a great book, Sticky Faith. I've gone through this with my church. I've gone through this in children's ministries workshops. Faith trajectories are often set in early adolescence. Sadly, most youth ministries are long on fun and fluff and short on listening and thoughtful engagement. The former produces a million paper boats. The latter produces a handful of seaworthy ships. He goes, you know what? We often just want to entertain and engage, but we need to realize that really going deep with our children from much younger is the key to them understanding and owning their faith. Yes, this is an Australian researcher, Philip Hughes. 50,000 young people a year are leaving the Christian faith and deciding that they have no religion. So when we do the census, they don't just go, I was Adventist and now I'm Baptist or Pentecostal or whatever. They're like, I'm no religion. And this is a few years old now. And this is another Australian, David Goodwin. One of the biggest problems I've seen, and I believe must be addressed, is that the large percentage of children who have been brought up in Sunday schools and churches and in Christian homes do not continue on into adult church. It's a growing trend. The statistics are confronting. They keep me awake at night as a pastor, as a children's ministries leader, as a parent. Okay? And I want to hit you with it because we can do something about it if we take this seriously. Josh McDowell, a very well-known author, he talks about this. Listen to this. 20 years ago, the phrase was, if you don't reach a young person by 18, you probably won't reach them. Now the atheists and the agnostics have the same access to your kids as you do. It's just one click away. Social media and the internet has changed the game. The internet has leveled the playing field. And now if you don't reach a child by their 12th birthday, you won't reach them. Ouch. So the idea of taking kids seriously in their faith earlier is the point. Our very own Dr. Barry Gain from here in Sydney, Australia, there's an increasing probability that young people will develop high Christian commitment and high loyalty to the church if they have the benefits of effective homes, effective churches, and effective Adventist schools, based on the Value Genesis study, which we did. We did 1 and 2. This was from Value Genesis 2. So we all sat down and scratched our heads together. And at first you get a bit depressed. And then you would realize the research points to a number of things. To really help people develop their faith and become serious in it, we came up with this acronym, SHAPING. And we realized that these are some key pillars based on some research that came out of a whole bunch of churches being confronted with the same statistics we just looked at and saying, what do we do? And we realized we wanted to put our own spin on it and our own focus on it. And we came up with this. Critical to kids' faith is being involved in service and mission from a very young age. We often talked about Stormco. Stormco kicks in when they're 15, 16. Guess what? Too late. Kids need to be involved in service and mission, not just when they become teenagers and you think they now have something valuable to contribute. Way, way, way earlier than that. I'm not knocking Stormco. I've done 1 million of those trips myself. But it's too late if that's when you think they're going to get serious about it.
But if they've already been doing it, then that's
brilliant. Fantastic. Okay, this idea of homegrown. Homes have to be empowered. This is where they're founded and rooted, and we need to find better ways to resource families. Authentic relationships. This is talking about you and I engaging with kids within our care, not just my own kids. How do we have authentic relationships with, and you'll notice it comes down to intergenerational connections as another one, okay? So authentic relationships and intergenerational connections are sort of linked. Participation. How do we involve more kids in what happens at church? Okay, often kids don't have a voice when it comes to the adult serious stuff. And I often say to people, how can you give kids a voice and feel like they're participating and involved and own what happens here? We talked about intergenerational connections. They realize that adults, old people have a lot to offer kids, and kids have likewise. The learning has to go both ways. What I love is when oldies are able to educate and train kids in skills that are no longer common. So I'll give you 2 examples. I know of a nursing home where the ladies will go and meet with school groups and teach them how to do things like knitting and crocheting and stuff. The young girls love it because many of their mums don't know how to do it, so let alone teach them how to do it. So the older ladies feel like they have something to contribute. But the young girls teach the older ladies how to do internet banking, how to keep connected with their friends and their grandkids on FaceTime and the internet and stuff like that, because they find that all very overwhelming and very difficult. And the young men do likewise, how to change the oil and change the tires on the car, and the older men help the young guys with that, and the young guys do the same, some of the internet stuff and being online and similar things. Intergenerational connections where there's mutual learning. It's not just them down, it's you guys can also help us. Noteworthy memory events, things like summer camps, adventurers, pathfinders, Stormco trips, something they look back on and they go, man, those were really, really important good days, okay? And also God encounters, how they experience God for themselves, not just through someone else's story or experience, but for themselves. They own it for themselves. So this is available as a resource for churches as well. We've created a booklet where we not only have those 7 outlined, but we give you an ideas or strategies on each one of those as well. So that's touching on Faith Shaper. The reason I want to come to this one pretty quickly is that many times kids' ministries is not really thought of and budgeted well as a way of reaching the community. And I think it's the most effective way to reach your community. When you reach a family with kids and you minister to their kids, you get the whole family. But the reverse is not true. If you come up with a strategy or a ministry to reach mum and dad, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get the kids. But when you focus on their kids, you often get the whole family dynamic come along. Because parents love that you're reaching out and doing something significant for their kids. I want to share a few things, just help you think about things you're probably already doing, but thinking of them more evangelistically. So what's the first one? Children's Sabbath School. Have you ever thought of promoting or resourcing your Sabbath School as something for not only your own children, but for kids in the community? But here comes the challenge. It means you need to take this seriously, and we need to up the ante in the game. Because trust me, there are many people in the community that are looking for opportunities for their kids. And this is one that we do all the time, but we don't really think about it strategically as a way to reach into the community. This is a little sign-in sheet from our church. We take it very seriously, this whole idea of checking in. Then, they register when they come in, they register when they leave. This duty of care, we live in a different world, a different age. And we'll be talking a little bit later on about, AdSafe and the roles and responsibilities we have there as well. But I just wanted to share that with you. Maybe thinking that the things we already do could be evangelistically focused and not just be so in-house focused. Kids' church, like we did today, or maybe doing more of those or different ways of it, where intergenerational worship is experienced, where kids and children are doing something fun and creative together. There's a resource called Messy Church, where adults, it's not parents drop the kids off and leave and then come back when it's done. Adults and the kids do it together. And it's called Messy Church. It's a lot of fun. I've done it a number of times. And there's different stations that you rotate around. So you could have a person leading activities, a person leading songs, a person leading, like a food, little, snack table, a person telling a story, a person doing a little icebreaker game that ties into the overall theme of the day, and another person doing craft. And the families rotate from activity to activity. They're not all doing it at the same time, but they're experiencing all of it at some point during the event, if that makes sense. Messy church. I've said to churches, you know what, maybe do this twice a year, the first half and the second half, or once a quarter, whatever works for you, but try it. And if it works, keep doing it. And if it doesn't, you can just go, well, we tried something different. Okay? Whoops. Playgroups. I want to talk about this. You know that church buildings are some of the most underused, underutilized resources we have. We use them for a few hours, and then that's it. Playgroups, if you're able to, are a way to engage your broader community. I'm going to talk in detail about this in just a moment. I'm actually working through establishing a curriculum and an idea where a Lego playgroup could be something that not only entices your own children, but kids in the broader community that have no church background, where they come and they play together, but it's themed around deep spiritual topics, but in fun, creative ways. Not deep, overwhelming things like, for example, today's theme is Noah's Ark. Build me something, any part of the story. It doesn't have to be the boat. It could be the animals that went into the ark. Build me something from the story. If you don't know the story, by the way, I'm going to tell you a really brief version. And you tell them the story, because you can't presume everyone there knows the story. And then they get busy building. What a great way to reach into the community, but also minister to your own children. All right? There's another resource called Happy Hands, run by an Australian Adventist lady. If you want to go onto their website, they resource everything for you. They list your venue as a Happy Hands spot that parents have to register for. And guess what? It costs your church nothing. They do the advertising. They supply all of the things that you need. And they even list you on the website. So when a parent in the community is going, I would like to join a local Happy Hands club, guess what? Your venue pops up. And you know what's beautiful? I've looked through it a number of times. Most of the venues are Adventist churches. So people in the community are going, wow, these guys are really serious about this. This is awesome. Initiated by an Adventist lady who was formerly from Melbourne, and I think now living on the Central Coast. And the beauty of it is parents are happy to pay for it. So it's not costing your church out of its budget. But go and have a look at that. So that's a resource I'd like to promote if you're not interested in any other form of playgroup. So it's called Happy Hands Art. Talked about the Lego idea. I've just helped two young guys from a church go through preparing for their board presentation on what they think they need to initiate this new ministry idea. The church is very open, has a few questions, a few concerns, many of them sort of generational and cultural, which we're working through. But they're happy to explore that. My advice to any churches that are wanting to step into something different or creative is to do it on a trial basis. Say to someone, hey, let's try this for 3 months. And if it works really well and heaps of our own kids and kids from the community just flock here, well, let's keep doing it. And if it doesn't work, well, at least we tried something different. All right? I was going to put some samples in there, but we've run out of time. Adventurers and pathfinders, I say to people, don't just think about it as something to serve your own kids, but how are you connecting with kids in the community? In my local church Pathfinder Club, I would be bold enough to say that about 15% of our club are kids, friends from school that our kids have invited and said, hey, you should come, this is so much fun. And guess what? They come, and they have fun, and they stay, and then they invite another friend. And I think it's great. Our kids are more open about their faith than sometimes we as adults are, which is really interesting. But think about Pathfinders and Adventurers as an outreach opportunity, not just something that we're doing for our own kids. This is one of the greatest ministry opportunities that I believe that we have. And then you've got community events, special maybe one-off things, kids' holiday clubs, all those sort of things, which you might do monthly, quarterly, annually, who knows, whatever. Kids clubs, I call them kids clubs in Australia because when you say Vacation Bible School, VBS, the community has no idea what you're talking about. In fact, it sounds very scary and I don't think I'll come. Okay? A Vacation Bible School sounds like school that's like really hardcore Bible. And if I'm from the community and I don't know what that is, I don't think I'm going to come. So we call it kids clubs. There's a lot of resources that we've built up at the conference. I wanted to get every group VBS kit that was ever put out. And it was very hard because when I came in, many of the kits were no longer made or discontinued. We've slowly tracked most of them down. And so all of these kits are in a lending library at the conference, so you're welcome to come, borrow them, prepare, It does all the hard work for you. It will give you a whole week's worth of activities themed on a daily program from Monday to Friday. What I often recommend churches do is to do Monday to Friday and finish on Saturday as a celebration service. Because parents will often drop their kids off but not be able to stay because they're on holidays but the parents are not. And so they're at work or whatever, and then they don't experience what the kids experience. So on Saturday, you invite them and say, we want to do a celebration and tell you about everything we did during the week. And parents love to see their kids up the front, photos of what happened during the week. We often do a really big lunch celebration and an opportunity to engage with the parents as well. So there's a whole range of kits. You can see there's a massive list, and there's more because some new ones have come out over the last couple of years. And there's photos of me dressing up as a Mexican, which is a bit scary, doing our own local Fiesta VBS. But I would also like to challenge you to use other times in the year where the community is probably more open to spiritual things than they normally are. For example, we've just been through Easter, okay? Many people have very strong views, even in church land, around Easter and, the pagan influence, and I get all of that. But what an opportunity to talk about the true message of Easter when the community is most open to it. It's a missed opportunity if we're going to just dig our heels in and go, no, we're not doing it. So what I've often done is, and I'm going to share this with you, I often buy the biggest red Easter egg I can find. Massive one, covered in foil because it's big and it's enticing and it's shiny. All the kids look at it. I go, you know what? I want to tell you a really cool Easter story. This Easter story is a love story. And it's the story that someone loved you so much that they died for you. Can you imagine that? Someone loves you so much that they're prepared to die for you? So it's a drop of blood, right? You rip the foil off and you end up with the brown, earthy colored egg. And I said, the real Easter story is that this person that died because they loved you so much was put in a tomb, like a tomb. They were buried in this earthy grave. But you know what the most exciting and amazing thing about the Easter story is? And then I smash the egg in front of the kids, sometimes eat a bit. That gets them going really crazy because I'm the only one who's enjoying it. And I go, that's so yummy, that's delicious. I wish you could all have some, but you can't. So anyway. But then I say to them, the best part of the Easter story is that the tomb is empty. It's hollow. Because the person that loved you so much that they died and was put in the tomb isn't dead anymore. They're alive again. Can you imagine that? And this person that I'm talking about is Jesus. Someone who's not into Easter will never look at an Easter egg in the same way again. But what a missed opportunity for us when we often think, no, not for us. It means this. But how about we make it mean something else? I came across these little things a few years ago, little, of all places, from Aldi. They were little Lego sheep. And I gave all the kids in my school one on a little card that says, the lamb who gave his life because he loved. So very simple. It was a massive bag of little chocolate sheep. And instead of them getting an Easter bunny or an Easter egg, I gave them a little chocolate sheep. And I said, this is the actual Easter story. Again, a missed opportunity in school land to actually go there and have conversations with kids that would otherwise never hear it. On the idea of VBSs and stuff, we're trying to coordinate. If you do something creative and amazing in kids' ministries, we want to try and centralize some of those resources so that other people can use them and benefit out of them. North New South Wales Conference does this really well, where they have a hub where you can bring all these resources and borrow from one another. So we've started to build on that. We have some props and banners and backdrops from summer camps and things that you can borrow and use in your ministry into the community without having to reinvent the wheel. Imagine every club or church or school trying to do the same thing, knowing that someone else has done it and has all these amazing things that they're probably not going to be able to use for another 5 years, and at least until those kids are gone. Because trust me, do that kit this year, do it 2 years later, guess what's going to happen? The kids are going to be like, oh, what? We already did this one. Like, they'll remember. You have to wait unfortunately, for that group of kids to sort of move through. All right, this is something we trialed a few years ago. You can see 2019 at my local church. We set up a whole bunch of fun, inflatable activities in the community and invited them to come and have a family fun day, which was completely free. Because families are often stressed and worried about budget and being able to do something together as a family. So if you can go to a park and set something up, promote it in your community, and do something that's family orientated. Those are some of the activities that we set up. We had an absolute ball. Some of them were very, very simple, but getting parents to do it with others. There you can see on the bottom left, or the bottom right-hand corner, is a foam bow and arrow sort of game that a wife was shooting the apple off the head of the helmet of her husband that was wearing a protective helmet.
Yeah, I was going to point out that OHS wouldn't be a really good idea to have that person standing that close to the target with a bow and arrow.
Yeah, no, we had a welding helmet. They had a welding helmet on with an apple that was glued onto the top. It was absolutely hilarious. Wives wanted to shoot their husbands, husbands wanted to shoot their wives, and then parents wanted to shoot the kids, and the kids wanted to shoot the parents. It was a lot of fun. All right, so you can be as creative as you want to be and have as much fun, and it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg to do that sort of stuff either. I was going to insert a whole number of photos, and I can pull them up and show you later. The conference, I invested last year in 3 incredible inflatable activities, and I was so disappointed when COVID hit because no one wanted to touch them because it was all community orientated and contact. So everyone was like, nah. So I had these incredible resources that sat idle for 12 months. Of late, they have gone out nearly every 2 weeks, which I'm so thrilled about. So we have this activity. It's called Wipeout. It's inflatable, the arms spin, and the idea is you either jump over it or under it, and if you don't, you get thwacked with those big, soft arms that are spinning around. I think it's absolutely hilarious. I did it with the Year 12 boys at Hills Adventist College, and they all came out going, oh, we got this, no problem. I let it rip. And you can change the direction, you can change the speed, and at the end I had these guys just conked out because, they think they're invincible, but the game beat them in the end, which was so much fun. But I have actual photos of these activities. We've got this one. We've got another one, 4-way gladiator duel, where each person stands on a little tower with an inflatable sort of joist and a helmet. And you can get mum, dad, and each, like maybe 2 kids, and they try and knock each other off the pillar. So that's for the slightly younger. This is for the sort of teens and above. I have one for primary age group, which is that gladiator duel. Then we have a giant bumblebee jumping castle for little kids. And that one has gone out 6 times this year already. So adventurer clubs, churches, the schools are using it for their open days, anything community orientated. So one of my roles is to resource you better to do it more for yourself in your community. Instead of me running everything for every part of Sydney, how can I resource you better to do more of that yourselves? All right? All right. Again, Operation Winter Warmers is just a sample or idea of what we do in the middle of each year. COVID last year really hit us hard, where we couldn't door knock and collect non-perishable food and blankets because we weren't able to make physical contact with people. And that's just a bit of a photo of the kids, the adventurers, our pathfinders. Families go out together, obviously supervised. And we've also come up with this real neat fold-out information card, which I've taken a photo of there, from our church that lists all the key ministries that we're involved at a local level. So when we meet people in the community, we can say, hey, this is what we do for our kids and our teens and our youth. We meet for Sabbath school, on a Saturday morning. We have cell groups that meet midweek. This is when our church service is on. We have Youth Friday night programs called MEC Youth. If you're interested, here's a little card, and it folds down into the size of a little business card. And so just thinking of ways to engage in your broader community. So linking into that idea of using children's ministries programs as a way of reaching out. Getting to GraceLink. Do you know that GraceLink actually stands for this? God-based, relational, applicable, challenging, and experiential. That's what the GRACE stands for, okay? And so sometimes we need to do better in this area, be more creative, be more intentional, and be better planned in what it is that we deliver for kids, all right? And so there's the spread of the ages, because many people wonder what are the different age groups that are recommended through the GraceLink curriculum and program. And again, they've given you a lot of ideas and thoughts on crafts and programming, but the idea is to not pick that up as you walk into the room and then read it to the kids. It's how do I understand it and then relate it best to this group in a fun, creative, engaging way, okay? So this is what I want to challenge churches with. And there's some specific responsibilities for Sabbath school leaders, and I've just highlighted a few there. And this is often helpful for people because they don't often realize, well, what are some of the roles and the expectations that are given? The one I highlighted down the bottom is ensure volunteers are screened and have relevant and completed child safety forms. So you're working with children checks, and that the room environment is safe. Again, we live in a different day and age. We need to make sure we're doing the right thing. So add safe, making sure you've got a coordinator, your leaders have gone through all of their different checks and balances. Also, delegate teachers' responsibilities and ensure total hour learning happens. What do I mean by that? Look at this. Active learning in a total number of hours, in that total hour, is an adventure, is fun and engaging, involves everyone, is student-based, is process-orientated, is relational, and is also focused through debriefing. It's not just telling them a whole bunch of things and then walking out of the room. It's getting them engaged. And I want you to notice the little graphic down the bottom. Spoken word, how much do they retain? Very little. Media helps, which we think in this day and age probably is all of it, and it's not. Role-playing, where they're actually actively involved, or direct experiences is where they really retain the essence of what it is that's been talked about. Just telling them the story or speaking to them is not going to cut it, okay? I came across this. Tell me and I'll forget, show me and I may remember, but involve me and I'll understand. Okay, very true. So I asked one of the very creative ladies in my local church to give me a sample of what she does when she does this hour. And this is what she does. So she takes the lesson title, she puts it up there, and she breaks down all of the different elements that need to occur in what they're doing with the kids. Again, if we're going to not only use Sabbath school time as a way to reach our own kids more effectively, but reach kids in the community even more so, we need to up the ante in this area. We need to be well planned and resourced and intentional. And these are some ways that we can think about it. What do we need to do to get ready? What is the story we focused on? How are we going to apply it? And then how are we going to practice this? And they walk out of there with all these fun things that they've engaged with, as opposed to you just sitting there reading the story out of the little pamphlet that they've put together. And by the way, there's always more information in the week's stuff than what you can get through in the allocated time. So it's for you to go through and say, this will work for us, this will need to tweak, this will need to change, we may need to leave that out, or we'll do this differently. Okay, it's just a starting point. Most people pick it up, walk in, read it, and think, oh, this will be awesome, and it's not. All right, another one I wanted to just highlight there as well is share important dates and events with other classes and ministries in order to integrate all church activities and plan a yearly calendar of family-friendly events that empower, equip, and encourage partnerships with parents. Why do I say that? Sometimes ministries compete over people's time and attention. COVID has taught us something, that people don't want to just go back to what they always did. Some people enjoyed the fact that they had more time with their family and less things that they had to rush off to do. So we need to be a little bit wiser in what we do and how we do it. And if you want things to be well supported, talk about all the things that are going on across all the ministries of the church, as opposed to this ministry wanting everyone's attention and time and focus over here, and this group wants everyone's time, attention, and focus over there, and next thing you know, people are pulled in every which direction. So sometimes being more intentional in how you schedule your dates and your events, and which ministries that impacts, and how that's communicated to the church is actually very, very important. And even more so when parents know well in advance what's happening so they can roster in. Because I tell you now, you give people very little notice, people in today's day and age have plans on what they're going to do for most of the year. So you're not just going to come in and boom, land something and all of a sudden miraculously think everyone's going to be there, particularly, as I said, what we've learned out of COVID. And the last thing that I want to leave with you as well, is strategies for partnering with parents. Okay, I've listed just a number of ideas there, but the one in particular that I want to highlight is equip them. Getting up in the morning, eating meals together, walking or traveling together, or going to bed, is showing them some moments in the day that they can be intentional and using as spiritual opportunities with their children. And again, we need to think about how do we not just do this for parents, but equip them with things that they're able to use and do for themselves. So there's just a couple of ideas there as well. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but it's one I'm very passionate about, and unfortunately we haven't been able to do the men's retreat for the last year with COVID, and again this year we don't have the budget for it because a number of conference events have been slimmed down. But MATE stands for mentoring, accountability, training, encouragement, and then spirituality and service. How can we as men really encourage one another to lift the bar when it comes to engaging with our homes and particularly our wives and our children more effectively in a spiritual sense? I want to just share this with you. If you're not familiar with the love languages strategy, this is a game changer when I talk to couples. And yeah, I want to just share this with you. My primary and secondary love language is completely different to my wife's. We do not share the same two, okay? Which is like learning to speak another language. Mine, if you're wondering, is gifts and words of affirmation. My wife's is quality time and acts of service. So when I want her to feel loved, I have to speak the love languages that make her feel loved, not the ones that come naturally for me, and vice versa. And we have to intentionally practice that. Here's the newsflash. I have 2 daughters. Neither of them have ours, and they are radically different to each other. Same parents, same home, same upbringing. One's primary love language is physical touch, not mine, not my wife's, but it's hers. If she's not touching one of us, she feels unloved. The other one, okay, hers is quality time as well. So she just wants to talk your ear off and tell you about everything that's happened in her day, because then she feels that she's engaged and she spent time with you. So it's one thing for couples to get their head around it, but realizing that this is true for our kids as well. They have different love languages. And we can't presume that because they're our kids that they're the same as ours, or that because they're our kids they're going to be the same either. All right, so I often try and help dads in particular understand this idea. How to speak your spouse's love language. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. There's the 5 listed down the side there. Words of affirmation, receiving gifts, quality time, acts of service, and physical touch. How to communicate, actions to take, and things to avoid, just as a bit of a heads up. There's a number of resources out there. The 5 love languages, as you can see, in a whole range of different contexts for men, of children, of teenagers. And then I came across this by the guy who wrote the book, The 5 Love Languages. A child who misbehaves has a need. To overlook the need behind the misbehavior can prevent us from doing the right thing. Asking ourselves, what can I do to correct my child's behavior, often leads to thoughtless punishment. Asking, what does my child need, lets us proceed with the confidence that we will handle the situation well. I thought that was really, really well put. Okay, is really understanding what's going on. And so this is a crossover between, couples and relationships, marriage, homes, and also parenting. This is a challenging one I often go through with men. As you look there, where would you say your style of parenting would fit? Would you see yourself as, so there's, on the left, you've got high demands, low demands, and then also in relation to relationship. So for example, if you're very high on demands, but very low on a relationship, you're uninvolved. Okay? But the ideal is to be very high on demands, but also very high on relationship. You'll notice there's a subtle difference between authoritarian and authoritative. Okay? Kids don't mind boundaries and structure, but they want it in the context of a relationship. If there's boundaries and structures but no relationship, then you're just someone who has to be obeyed, and that's it. There's no other way. And so when you're high on relationship but also high on demands, that's the ideal sweet spot. And so have a look at some of the trends or the tendencies there. This is the challenging question though. Reflect on which of these was your experience as a child, and now which of these best reflects your own parenting style currently? Tough question, because we can often see what we experienced, and are we just falling into the same patterns or behaviors, or have we learned from those and are we choosing to be differently in the process? So again, just something that I often go through, particularly when we do the men's ministries mates workshops and training. Now I'm going to move to our last one, which is the creative ideas. And I'm just going to throw out a range of different things because people often say to me, how do we become more creative and intentional in what we do with kids? So I met with a whole bunch of adventurer leaders. We had an absolute blast, and I just hit them with a million different ideas and thoughts. I had time where they went to their tables and they came up with more around different themes and things we were planning right then and there, just to illustrate the fact. But I believe every single person can be creative. But here's the issue. Creativity takes time. If you sit down at a table and I go, come on, Leo, get creative. I need you to be creative right now. You need to come up with something really awesome now. Very hard. But if you say to someone, hey, what could we do that would be really fun and creative? It needs to simmer and sort of take on flavor, right? But I want to illustrate this. Not everyone's creative. But I want to do this exercise as maybe a way of re-engaging you because this has been going for a while already. And I warned you that it was going to be boom, 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 a range of different things. Just using the shapes that I have on the screen now, give me some ideas of things that you could create just using those shapes. I'm going to give you a moment to think about it, and then I want you to call some of them out, and then I want you to see if you agree with some of the ones that I've put and pre-prepared on the screen. So only using those shapes, what are some pictures that you could create using your mind, your creativity right now? And I'm going to give you a moment to think about them, and then we're going to call them out and see if there's some common themes. And then I'm going to put up some, and you can tell me whether you think I've fallen on my head as a child and I've lost it, or whether you go, oh, yep, I hadn't thought of that one, and we'll see if we can come up with a few. And I'm going to take notes because I'm going to add the ones you come up with that I haven't. Okay, so rearranging them and creating a completely different picture or scenario. Just going to give you a moment. What I want to illustrate, though, is if I gave you another 10, 15 minutes, you'd be amazed at how many more you would come up with. So it's almost counterproductive where I'm saying, do it now, but with time, we can all be very creative. Okay? All right, because of time constraints, who wants to call out a few pictures that they've created in their own mind already?
I've got one.
Yep.
Okay, if you turn the whole thing this way, it's like a head and a body together.
Okay, we're going to come back to that one in a minute.
Yeah.
Claudine. You can make a robot? Okay, cool. Anyone else?
I want to see what shape is the robot.
Sort of, did you just put the circle on top of the head? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to do something. I'm going to make myself very... Yes, up the back. I was hoping someone was going to say that. Ice cream cones. I'm going to make myself very, very vulnerable now and share you some that I've pre-prepared earlier. You know, like the cooking show. There's a few that I did earlier. Now you can... You can look at me and go, yeah, no, that's just whacked, mate. That's not happening.
Oh. Yeah, that's my one. Yeah. That's good. That's good. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And if you move it looks like, pigtails. Oop.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. A landscape.
Now it's getting very abstract.
You came up with this, Craig? You did have a knock.
There's my friend up the back, 2 ice cream cones. Or snow cones. My kids are like, that's not an ice cream cone. I'm like, okay, snow cone.
You have to beat our age to know what that means.
See the hills with the water and the red and the yellow life-saving sort of. Again, so now we're pushing the margins, but we're getting.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But what did we just illustrate? With time and intentionality, I believe anyone can be creative. And with a little bit of prompting and pushing and research, I think we can be super creative. So when people say to me, I'm just not creative, I go, you give up too quickly. And you just want it to fall into your lap and just be easy, and it's not.
And you, like me, have been in this situation many times with, camporees and so on.
Yep, summer camps, yep.
What I've found is that, because I haven't got a creative body in my body, but I have surprised myself when you got time and when you're connected to other people.
That spark ideas and collaboration. Yeah.
What I can come up with. So it's quite
Brilliant.
amazing. It is quite amazing.
And we don't have to do this in isolation.
Surprised myself.
Imagine if you sat around and did this at a table together.
Yeah. That's right. And particularly if you had the pieces as pieces.
And by the way, I've done that. You can buy little kits in wood at Kmart for like $2 each, and it's a tangram. It's got all the pieces in a square. And I've given that to kids, and I said, I want you to create a scene or a picture. And then go next level and say, now I want you to create one where you all put your pieces together. It's mayhem. It takes a lot of time to fix and clean up after, but it's so worth it. To see what they come up with will blow your mind. But with time and intentionality, I think we can all up the ante and be a lot more creative than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, Craig, I remember I was brought in late at Sydney Camporee to take over an activity with Peter Fowler because the guy had dropped out. I said, Leo, look, and this is a theme. That's all we got given, a theme. That's it. You got to come up with a game for 200 kids. I was beside myself. I've never done this before. And it was amazing what a group of people come up with.
Yeah.
It was incredible. I still remember to this day.
But imagine if we did that more consistently and, yeah,
And we've seen this time and time again.
time again, yeah.
It's the sort of stuff that you can do every second Saturday night. That's right. As social.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to share with you some other really wacky, I'm being vulnerable and being very open and honest with you. I was a chaplain at a school and I developed this series for the week. I had tried most of the kits. The kids were going to go, been there, done that, we know that theme or something close to it. So we came up with this one called The Treasure Beyond Measure. We went on this massive, epic voyage. That's how we set up the stage. Kids are visual. We felt like we're on a ship, going through the waters, exploring all these different places. I dressed up as a pirate, got one of the teachers there to help me. We came out and did crazy shenanigans with the kids each day. You know, you have to be prepared to laugh at yourself and have other people laugh at you as well. We had so much fun. You can see the little, I'll show you what we gave to each of the kids. Each kid got that little pack at the end of the week. So they got a bookmark where they could respond to their decisions. They got a little gold coin, the pearl of great price, the little treasure chest with some of the things we'd learnt about, all in that little bag. And I kid you not, I'm speaking to Year 12s this year at their valedictory dinner, and one of them walked up to me with some of the little kits that they still have. And they go, we remember this little thing that we did. Kids remember these significant creative moments if we're prepared to invest the time and the energy, and it really makes their faith come alive for them. One of the things the church, I had to ask permission, or actually I had to ask for forgiveness, not permission, because I did it and then. But this was in Castle Hill Church. I bought one of those big cannons, that do the confetti. And at the end, I said, we've gone on this big adventure, and, we're going to fire the ship's cannon to say we've arrived back in port safe and sound. And boom, she let rip. And I wish you could have seen how nuts the kids went. It was absolute gold. The kids went crazy. But what an awesome memory if we're prepared to just risk it and be a bit creative and step outside of, and it's not always appropriate in every context. I did this with Mountain View when I was the chaplain there for Valentine's Day, using the verse John 3:16 and highlighting the little word Valentine all the way through the verse. And each child got the little chocolate, and it gave us the opportunity to tell kids that had never come from an Adventist church or even from another, a Christian faith, that God loves them and cares for them, and this is the extent to which He would go for them. It was just something fun that we did around Valentine's Day as well. Again, simple, creative, and it really didn't cost a lot of money. This is Crazy Love. I love to dress up as character. So each day I dressed up as a different person, all for the same week. So the first day I was the artist, the second day I was the professor, the third day I was the sheriff, then I came back as the gardener, and then ultimately the mad scientist who desperately wanted to live forever, which is this thing that God's put inside each and every single one of us. So what I'm saying is, when push comes to shove, I think we can all step outside of, the realms and do what is comfortable for you. We're not all comfortable doing the same thing. My wife often jokes and says I have more dress-up fun clothes than I do serious clothes. Literally, this is the only suit that I own. Everything else is pretty much fun and who knows what all. But just a really simple thing. Again, I wanted to show you a fun way to do creation with kids. Take an A4 piece of paper, divide it into 3, and have a look at this. On day 1, what did God do? He separated light and dark. On day 2, what did He do? He separated the waters above and below. On day 3, what did He do? Land and plants. On day 4, what did He do? Sun, moon, and stars. On day 5, what did He do? The fish and the birds. And on day 6, what did He do? Animals and people. He formed them, and then He filled them. Trust me, when I test kids now, what happened on day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, when they've done this process, they don't forget. Instead of just a list of, what happened on day 4?
Understand that relation between the first 3 days and the next 3 days is a really, I learned that a few years ago.
Yeah.
I said, hey, wow, I never saw that.
And then, we're not finished yet. What I often say to people is day 7 is all about relationships with each other and with God. And when we can help kids see things in a fun, creative way, and even as adults, we look at that and go, wow, I actually never saw that before, and I'll remember that now. Let me give you another one. Fun way to do the 10 Commandments with kids. Who's ever received the first ribbon? God wants to be first. Don't bow down and worship other idols in the shape of number 2. Shape of number 3, the lips. Don't use God's name in vain. Number 4, you can't see this very well. I don't know what happened there. But it's a church and the number 4 is in the door. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. That's gone really weird for some reason. Respect your mum and dad. Number 6, don't murder or kill. 7, don't break hearts, commit adultery, broken home. Number 8, don't steal. So the little mask that the robber's wearing, number 8. Number 9, the speech bubble. Don't tell lies, gossip, or cheat. And number 10, coveting, looking through the door at something that someone else has. When you do it in a fun, visual way, again, when I say to someone, what's this number? And they've seen it like that, they remember the picture. They don't have to necessarily remember. Again, creativity takes time, but it's a fun way to make God's word come alive to kids. And again, I wanted to model to you that with enough time, and I was going to test you now to see if you can all remember, but we've run out of time. Another simple thing. How many of you have ever played with Rubik's Cubes? This sort, the long one. I talk about how God wants to be your absolute best friend. You know how they say a dog is a man's best friend? I'm like, no, that's rubbish. Talk about how and why that's the case. That He would come and join us on planet Earth, give them the challenge and see if they can form the ball, and even more so if they can do the heart. There's the really creative and simple things that you can use. If you're interested, I can come back. I do balloon sculpting workshops. It's something else that I learned many years ago in leading a number of Stormco trips. So much fun you can have sculpting balloons. The stories you can tell and the props you can create for yourself. They're just some of the ones that I've done. Crowns, teddies. You can see I made our school principal out of balloons. He thought it was absolutely hilarious. Left it on his office desk, and all of the staff were coming in taking photos with it. And just the fun things you can do. I did the story of the ugly duckling there with the two balloons down the bottom. And also puppetry. I remember going to Sydney Chinese and helping them learn a little bit of the skill or the art of puppetry. And again, a great way to get young and old doing things together. And maybe just doing it as an item one week where you all learn a song and you get the puppets to perform it and no one has to worry about singing it themselves. They just play the track and the adults and the kids can get involved and do something fun and creative and hide behind a screen. And I find that for many kids that are very self-conscious, they come alive through the puppet, but they would never do what they do with the puppet by themselves up front, exposed and seen. Really interesting. This is another game that I've adapted particularly for the Bible. It's called Spot It. If I had it here, I'd show you, but this is a Bible version I've created. How many of you can, this game, you can buy it from Big W for $17, but it's not Bible themed, it's just generic. How many of you can see each card has something in common? Yep. The way the game works is each person gets a card, and then on the count of 3, we turn our cards over and we have to name the thing that we have in common. And I use this as a way of saying, we have a lot of things that are different about us, but we can start with the things that we have in common. And I share that, I've used this with Pathfinder clubs, with teachers, when I do training with teachers or team building, and I've done a Bible version. Okay, so here's the test. Next one, first one to tell me what's the same on the next 2 cards. There's always one thing.
I think that's the head, the Roman soldier.
Yep, the Roman helmet. Next one, call it out.
The bread.
Yes. Really, really fun game. It's called Spot It. As I said, Big W, you can buy it for about $15, $16. And then I thought I'm going to adapt it and use the principle and do it into a Bible game. Something else that's fun and creative, geocaching. This guy's looking away because he used to do it, but now he's probably never done it again. I haven't done it for ages. Geocaching is an online treasure hunt. If you've never played it before, when you download it, every single little pin that you find on a map, like that, is something you can physically find in nature if you play the game. So every single one of those little pins on the map is something that is physically hidden out there for you to find. It's like a treasure hunt.
Is that a map of where you can find it?
Yeah.
It's worldwide.
On the phone. Anywhere in the world. Yeah.
Free app. It's free app. It's just an item. It's in the landscape. Is that right? Yeah,
It's an I have introduced, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of people and families to this. Is it because you went overboard on it? Or yeah, okay. All right. Yep. So it gives you details of how hard it is to find, how hard is it to get to, and how big is it. I'm going to give you an example of my favorite one I found with my daughters. It's called Jonah. The rock looks like the whale, and you actually climb in underneath the shaded area, and you sit inside, and it feels like you're sitting in the mouth of the whale. And in one of those little holes is the little container that you have to find. Because how geocaching works is whatever geocache you find, you have to sign the log to say, yes, I found it. Okay? And so there you can see the little container that we found, and we signed it to say, yes, we found the...
Where is that?
That's out towards the back of Dural.
Oh, it's in Sydney.
Yeah.
It's in Sydney. Okay.
And I'm busy working on, I had planned to launch this last year, but again, everything went crashing down. We're going to do a geocaching series from the conference, which we're going to call History Makers. And each of these people are people of faith, and you'll have to find out some information of them. And when you find the box, the number will give you access to the box, and you will then find out who that person is. And last but not least is Jesus Christ. All the other people on that list are all people that had faith. It's William Wilberforce, Neil Armstrong, Bach, Johannes Gutenberg printing the first Bible, Martin Luther King Jr., Albert Einstein, Mother Teresa, etc., etc. So these are all history makers, but people of faith, and it'll be a series that both pathfinders, adventurers, or just families in general can do. I'm going to put it out across the whole city. And I'm also going to put one out the front of my church when a new church building is built. And it will be a way of us meeting geocachers in our community. And it will be a lockbox that you can only access when you're playing the game so that it's not vandalized or opened or whatever. And it'll also be a lending library. So we're going to put books in there that if people who have come and found it, we'll say, welcome to come back and take a book anytime. And so this is, I've already prepared all the artwork for it. That's what it will look like when you go inside. And it'll be the History Maker series. Something else that I do often, I actually have a giant inflatable suit that looks like Mr. Potato Head. And I talk about the body of Christ. And I say to kids, if you've got a Mr. Potato Head, what would it look like if we only built Mr. Potato Head and we only used all the eyeballs? It doesn't look right. Or what does it look like if we only use all the ears? And I say the body of Christ functions when all of the limbs are there and they all have a different role and different function. And what has God equipped or shaped you to be? What can you do to serve Him and others? Again, fun, creative ways to talk about very deep and very spiritual topics. Case in point. There you go. For those that are not very, very, very creative, one of my favorite apps of all time, and no, it's not just for ladies, is Pinterest. Okay, you can type in Bible games, Sabbath school ideas, craft ideas. You can type in, props for VBSs. You will be amazed. And people are like you and I. They're on a budget, and they're creative, and they come up with awesome ideas. Why do we all have to reinvent the wheel? Okay, so if you want to be more creative in your kids' space or at home in your family worship time with your kids, use creativity of other people to your benefit, and let's step it up and engage kids in a really, really awesome way. Came back with, that's it.